The White Sox finally made a trade, and a good one, too. And could Adrian Houser be getting dealt next? Let's discuss on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan, a contributor for SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fansided Network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. Additionally, follow or subscribe to the show on your preferred podcast platforms. The White Sox traded Austin Slater to the Yankees and then pushed back Adrian Houser's start in anticipation of a trade. Let's discuss the deal the Sox made and what they could be looking for in return for Houser. Then I'm seeing a major meltdown on White Sox social media over Andrew Vaughn hitting a grand slam last night and thriving with the Brewers. Let's discuss the meltdown happening among the fan base and why there are reasons to keep cool, but also be frustrated. And finally, it's Wednesday, so this week's retro segment, let's look back at last year's trade deadline deals and see how the players the Sox picked up are doing. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. All right, so the Yankees were reportedly rumored to be interested in Austin Slater for outfield depth, with Aaron Judge being sidelined, and, well, they pulled the trigger. And the White Sox actually got a top 30 prospect back for Slater's ability to hit lefties, because that's the only value he has in the major leagues. Decent fielder, but doesn't really hit right-handed pitching very well, but man, you put him up against a southpaw, he is going to crush. He will rake. And the White Sox get a pitcher with probably one of the coolest names. Pitcher Gage Zeal. I mean, that is a sweet name. And another deal could be coming, as if you're listening to this, once this drops, it'll probably be around first pitch today against the Phillies. But Adrian Houser is not pitching. He was scratched from his start today. Tyler Alexander gets a start instead. SoxMachine.com's White Sox beat writer James Fegan is reporting Houser's still on the team. And the reason is New York Post and Odyssey Baseball insider John Heyman is reporting the team is holding him out in hopes of a deal being completed by tomorrow's deadline. Now, first, with the trade, if you can leverage Austin Slater's ability to only hit left-handed pitching for a top 30 prospect, even if the Yankees system is considered subpar, 26th best per Bleacher Report's Joel Reuter's latest rankings, and that's just the most recent rankings, you still made a good trade. Also, the Sox picking up a pitcher, good idea, because you and I have seen with all the arm injuries that happened in spring training, 7 young pitchers lost for the year. The White Sox can never have enough good young pitching. And with the Houser decision to pull him from his start, smart move. I mean, I was thinking, why are you starting him and risk him taking a liner off his knee or elbow, and then you've now completely lost your asset? So, smart idea. In terms of what the White Sox are looking for back in a trade for Houser, ESPN's Jesse Rogers reported earlier this morning, the White Sox want at least a prospect ranked in the team's teens when it comes to their top 30 prospect rankings. And I think that makes sense, given if you use converting the player to a dollar formula that teams like to use. I know I've talked about it on past episodes. Kylie McDaniel was on the White Sox Talk podcast episode with Chuck Garfien over the winter. I know the Marquee Network has a great video that goes over this. A lot of teams like to take players, calculate them into a dollar value, and then match it up with a dollar value that they assign to the prospects overall ranking on the 2080 scale that the scouts use. Kind of that way they can judge the value. It's kind of like the Jimmy Johnson, for those that follow the NFL, the Jimmy Johnson trade chart when you match up a trade for draft picks. It's a decent one. And teams, obviously, rightfully so, are looking this right now as a heater. So what I think is if you look at his 2019 production and 2021 through 2023, when he was a solid pitcher with the Brewers, I think that's where you get more of that dollar value in that $7 to $11 million range as I averaged it out. I just used Fangraphs, converting WAR to dollars. I know it's more for free agents, but it's still pretty accurate, at least of what's the dollars. I believe it was like 13 to 12 million. But you got to take a haircut because he was terrible last year. And there is the fear of regression. So, in that case, you're probably looking at a prospect value around, a 45 grade bat. That's usually a $6 million type of value if you look at it. Some 40 grade bats too. That's maybe 2 million. So you're kind of looking at those guys that are usually in the team's top 30. So it makes sense. Now, in terms of Zeal, he was the Yankees' 4th round pick last year. And this is what Elijah Evans of Just Baseball and FutureSox.net tweeted out. You know, I like having him on. I really respect his opinion. This is at Elijah EV8. Very solid get for Slater, honestly. Strike thrower with a plus slider and a good feel for 3 pitches. 4th rounder last year and just recently got a bump to AA. Should slide right into BAM rotation. So in terms of the grades, the slider is his best pitch, 55 grade, and his control is a 55 grade too, which is between average and above average. And, you know, the Yankees, they love their spin pitchers. So you're not going to get a guy that's going to throw with a ton of velocity. But remember, Drew Thorpe came up through the Yankees and he showed before, obviously he was lost for the year last year. And then this year, he showed a lot of promise. Although Jim Margulis of SoxMachine.com, he found this nugget on his slider. While his slider has been his best pitch when combing through his scouting reports, it doesn't show up his splits, as he's been tougher on lefties this year, versus right-handed batters, 281, 325, 419 over 228 appearances versus left-handed 254, 286, 325 over 119 plate appearances. Again, the thinking is that you're throwing a slider from a righty, you're trying to get the ball to go away, that type of stuff. But it's just been more tougher on lefties, which then shows maybe it's not his most effective pitch. Here's the scouting report on him per MLB Pipeline. Zeal's ability to command his fastball stands out more than its velocity in life, as it operates at 92 to 94 miles per hour and reaches 96 with modest run and ride. He misses more bats with a sweeping mid-80s slider that grades as a plus pitch with 2-plane depth as its best. He imparts fade and sink on a mid-80s changeup, but has difficulty keeping in the zone. At 6 feet and 223 pounds, Zeal is compact but strong and durable. He's a tough competitor who repeats his high 3/4 delivery with ease, enabling him to locate his fastball and slide with precision. The Yankees have a history of helping pitchers upgrade their stuff, and doing so with Zeal would raise his current ceiling of a number 4 starter. So you got a 22-year-old guy, already at AA, potential to be at least a back end of the rotation pitcher. And again, the White Sox need those guys. They need those guys just as much as they need aces, because we all saw the rash of injuries. And again, Tommy John, not the end of the world. You just lose time, but it's still a lot of time. So load up on pitching, and they love those 3/4 arm slot guys. I didn't get a chance to look at what his extension is, but I'm assuming it's got to be something decent. Otherwise, the White Sox tend to not take guys with good extension on their pitches, because that's what Brian Bannister likes, meaning, where do they release the ball to the plate, that type of stuff. He did have 8 Ks in a start on July 1st when he was at high A, had a 4 ERA at low A, 2.25 ERA at high A, had a 9 ERA though in his first start. Got hit a little bit in his first start at Double A, but he's growing and that type of stuff. Now, hopefully this trade with the Yankees works out better than most trade that the Sox have done with the Yankees, because some of them we know they've gotten a bit bad. Well, I do want to jump into another trade the White Sox made earlier this season. That is Aaron Savali and the Andrew Vaughn deal, where Vaughn is thriving, and he's sending fans into an absolute panic and hysteria. And let's discuss that after the break on Locked On White Sox. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting for forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. And that's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever for concerts and sporting events. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime or first pitch, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. And Game Time has those last-minute tickets and zone deals for big savings, like 10% off this exclusive zone deal that they have for the upcoming Cubs versus Orioles game on August 3rd. I know it's the crosstown rival, but the White Sox, they're out of town that weekend. So why not catch some pro baseball and root for your second favorite team, whoever's playing the Cubs? Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms. So make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. All right, so I am seeing some major mental gymnastics and melting down in Sox social media world over Andrew Vaughn, especially last night after he hits the grand slam to put the Brewers up big against the Cubs. And I get it. The optics right now, they don't look good. Aaron Savali is struggling to eat innings, and Andrew Vaughn looks like a superstar. But folks, there are things you're forgetting when you scream to the mountaintops that the White Sox did some sort of misjustice by giving up on Vaughn. One, this is what the Brewers do. They fix broken players because it's the only other avenue they have outside of the draft, international free agent signings, and trading players that are nearing the end of their club control to get more assets. This is the only chance that they use to get talented players. And yes, Vaughn is still a talented hitter. I'll give him that. I just believe he was too stubborn to make changes. Two, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but he's being asked to do less in the Brewers lineup and a role that he has thrived in. He thrives in a lesser role, like he did with the White Sox in 2021 and 2022. Three, he wasn't Chris Getz's draft pick. He was, Getz was barely involved in Vaughn's development in his previous role because Vaughn was barely in the minors. So if Getz wants to move on with his guys, like it or not, it's his right. And I know some of you don't like Chris Getz being the GM. I'm still neutral on him, but he's the general manager. It's his right if he wants to go out and move on with his guys. Four, I am going to say, though, the process was correct. The White Sox needed a veteran arm to eat up innings for a young rotation that was already starting to get taxed. And I'd rather have a healthy and confident Shane Smith and Sean Burke to move forward with, although Shane Smith has that ankle injury that I'm not buying, but it's a nice way to give him some rest. But I'd rather have Shane Smith and Sean Burke because they're going to probably be on the next competitive team. Andrew Vaughn had just 1 year left of club control. He wasn't going to be here for the next good team, in my opinion. And for those that are saying, well, he was your first baseman, he technically wasn't. They demoted him. He was at AAA, struggling. And five, the only reason he has gotten this opportunity is Rhys Hoskins got hurt. It's not like the Brewers are like, oh man, we gotta give Vaughn a look here. We got to give that 259 average that he has at Nashville a chance. Although, to be fair, he did have a 838 OPS. But still, another guy had to get hurt to come up. And at some point, you have to look at a player whose OPS and WAR continued to decline as he was asked to do more, and whose base running and defensive instincts were terrible, and be like, yeah, it's time to move on. Now, I'm fine if you are still frustrated with the deal and you're still like, see, look. If you just grew to like Andrew Vaughn, if you love Andrew Vaughn, that's your right. And if you want to support him and see him be the best version of himself, and you were hoping it was in the White Sox uniform, that's okay too. And I was once with you guys. I was once a Vaughn truther, but I jumped off the wagon after he became one of the many reasons, and again, keyword many, not the, but one of the many reasons why the White Sox lost 121 games in 2024. So I just beg you to stop making crazy claims and maybe just appreciate it wasn't working here and the White Sox had to pivot. Or may I suggest being frustrated with the White Sox because, they're just now, adding these things like video technology and TrackMan data or biomechanists, more of them, biomechanists, to identify issues and help players be the best versions of themselves. They're now just bringing that in. And it's going to take a little bit for obviously to get it up and running. Or maybe you can be frustrated because why didn't they catch? And why didn't the organization catch this swing issue that it seems like the Brewers caught? But don't make crazy claims like, oh, there's this group of fans. They're taking this overrated stat like WAR to create a narrative that Vaughn was only a replacement level player because WAR values defense too much. I actually saw that on social media. Somebody tweeted that. I had to mute that person. I'm sorry. Because, excuse me, you're going to say it's an overrated stat? a figure that takes into account the player's entire game, how they play, plug it into a formula to come out with a number to show just basically how they compare with an average player that can help you actually determine, hey, this is what the guy helps you in terms of wins. This is how this guy helps you. And because it also values everything they do, oh, that's overrated. Okay. Then how about this? OPS, which basically values and measures a hitter's ability to get on base and pretty much drive the ball when he makes contact. Here's Vaughn's basically what I would call a bell curve. In 2021, his OPS was 705. In 2022, it was 750. In 2023, it was 743. In 2024, it drops to 699. In 2025, with the White Sox, it was 531. He had a 111 OPS plus in 2022. It went down to 47 this year with the White Sox. And again, OPS plus and measures how high your OPS is relative to average, which the assumption is 100. So not only is he was he at average OPS, he was deep below average. And notice the years he had a decent OPS. He's got Jose Abreu and Tim Anderson as the focal points in the lineup. He just needed to be a supporting bat, and he thrived. But things start to decline when he is called upon to be a core player in the lineup. So you're just lucky. The narrative was, well, he's nothing more than a replacement level player. Because the narrative could be he was regressing, can't hack it as being the man player. Because that could be the narrative. And I know, hot take there, but that's what it could be. Now, it does sound like the Brewers did two things that makes you think, well, why didn't you try that, Chicago? And that's the more valid criticism than, oh, look, he's at the best version of himself. Because remember, he was hitting 189, 218, 314 slash line. That was his official Major League stats with the White Sox in 2025 before he was traded. He also had a 211, 328, 351 slash line at AAA once he was demoted. But there's two things it looks like the Brewers did. One, according to Harold Reynolds of MLB Network, and he, the tweet's up on the MLB Network. I think it's at MLB Network. They've got a video of it. Basically, Brewers straightened up his stance. Allows him to be more powerful. Reynolds, I know he's got weird takes and sometimes off-ball takes, but they were saying he was kind of crouching down too much that he wasn't able to drive the ball, and they straightened him up. The other, it sounds like they pretty much told him, stop swinging so much outside the zone. As Fangraphs Dan Szymborski, he's pointed this out. This is, wrong one. This is at D. Szymborski. For those watching on YouTube, Andrew Vaughn, out of the zone swinging percentage, career 32%. With the White Sox this year, 36%. With the Brewers, 22%. So it's valid to question, hey, White Sox, why didn't you just pull him from game action like you did with Luis Robert Jr. to work in the cages for a couple of days on some swing adjustments? Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you give him that grace? Or why did your biomechanists miss this when they found a way to fix Miguel Vargas? That's valid to question. That's valid to get upset about. But to spin this is nothing more than, that we just gave away a great player. Look at the context. This could be nothing more than his typical summer heater. Because, folks, he didn't play big league ball in June, where he has a career 820 OPS. So maybe this is his June. Now, if he continues to rake into August and September, then fine. Lose your mind. I'll probably lose it with you. Well, getting back to trade deadline deals, let's revisit the moves Chris Getz made last year in this week's Way Back Wednesday segment and see how those players are doing. And that is after the break. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. Brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. And let's be honest, some days on the course or off it, you just need that extra boost and stay sharp and energized. And I remember my buddy and I thought, hey, we're going to get this great deal playing 18. It was at Chapel Hill Golf Course in Johnsburg, Illinois. It's known as a longer course, but it was like $25 to walk. So we're teenagers thinking, hey, we could walk 18 while carrying our bags. Man, could I have used a 5-hour energy transfusion then as we were dragging on the back nine. I remember going up, they got a par 5, I think it's like a 660 yards, and it's hilly, and I remember going up like that final little hill thinking like I just climbed Mount Everest. Could have used that 5-hour energy transfusion then. And golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse to go without chasing down the bev cart. And if you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your order. Again, that's Locked On Golf to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. This code is not good on subscription orders. And whether you're meeting up with your friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion flavored 5-hour energy shots today. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. Let me go to the Twitter machine just to make sure no other deals have been made as I'm recording this before I dive into this week's Way Back Wednesday. Otherwise, I'm going to shift priorities there. Nope. So we're good. All right. Anyways, for this week's Way Back Wednesday, I'm just going to tell you right off the bat, not going to revisit much of the Vargas coming to the White Sox deal in that 3-team trade. I feel like that's been discussed enough on this show. I feel like I would definitely be a broken record. You guys know I love Jarrell Perez. You guys know I believe that, Miguel Vargas is more of a player development win than a player acquisition win. I have a piece out on SouthsideShowdown.com on when we should actually measure and trade grades, that type of stuff. Although Alex Albertus, he's healthy again. That broken leg is healed. He's at the Complex League. He's ranked as their 15th best prospect. He has a 964 OPS in 8 games. There, okay? I'm also not going to revisit the Eloy trade because Trey Mago retired. Had enough. I'm assuming it's probably because he kept pitching decently enough, just could never get a call up. So I'm sure he was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. You also know I love William Bergolla, so no need to review the Tanner Bakes deal. So that leaves just one looking back on last year's trade deadline deals, and that's Paul DeJong going to the Kansas City Royals for Harold Rosado. I believe it's Harold or Gerald. It's spelled with a J, but I believe last year my pronunciation guide, if I remember my pronunciation guide, it's Harold Rosado. Now DeJong, he had 6 more homers for the Royals, had a 694 OPS, moves on to the Nationals. Rosado, he started the year at AA, but he had a 5.89 ERA with a 1.90 whip, 16 walks to 14 Ks. And now he's at single A. So the thing is, again, this is just more of a reminder that you still need to take swings because Paul DeJong was never going to be part of the future. So there's nothing wrong with taking a chance on Rosado to see, can he be a bullpen arm? There's nothing wrong with that. And yeah, some of these deals probably might not work out. I mean, we don't know if Gage Zeal is going to be a viable pitcher for the White Sox, but I'd rather try that than still have Austin Slater, who can only hit lefties, for the last 2 months. And I know I've advocated for somewhat keeping him, but he was one of the guys that I was definitely worth saying, yeah, you should trade. That's a guy that I'm not going to be being like, oh, intangibly, he was going to help you. He was helping you a little bit, but you can live without Austin Slater on your roster, just like you can live without Paul DeJong. And there was nothing worse. There was nothing wrong with trying out Rosado. And some of the times, guys that involve like Paul DeJong, they're just not going to work out. But you should continue to take swings, since in the end, DeJong, first of all he did was hit homers last year, but he didn't help you win. His defense was terrible. He did not fit again into this context of what we've been talking about, where again, if you trade Mike Tauchman and his aching legs and all for a guy like Rosado, yeah, that's going to look bad because of the value Tauchman provides in helping you stay in games and even win some games along with his leadership. And Slater was helping that to a degree. But also, Slater got you a guy, usually again, guys that are in the top 30, even if it's MLB pipeline. But, every team has their own top 30. But guys that are usually in the top 30, those are guys that the front office, the scouts, even the industry say, these are guys that should be able to get to the big leagues at some point. They've got the potential. They've got it all. Rosado, I don't believe ever had that. There was a path, but there just wasn't, it's more of, taking a scratch off. There's nothing wrong with sometimes playing a scratch off lottery. But DeJong too, you think about it, he was just there to get some playing time, collect a check, hope he got traded, and he did that. So that's why I'm not going to pan this deal, because this serves as, again, a reason why you still make trades involving veteran players because there is the potential to get a younger, better player. And I think that's what we got to hope with in this Austin Slater trade. That, Gage Zeal, cool name and all, turns out to be a very good pitcher. And the other thing is, I remember in the scouting report, the kind of the bio that I've been reading, he was one of the better pitchers at the University of Miami. I don't know if he was their Friday pitcher, but he was a darn good pitcher. So you got to enjoy, you kind of got to get more excited about that. And those are the deals that, again, that I'm hoping, these are the returns that I'm hoping the White Sox get. That Adrian Houser gets you something more viable. That Luis Robert Jr., and I get we've been just going on and on and on and back and forth. I'd still rather take what you can get now than run the gamble again. But, can you get something for Steven Wilson? And hopefully they do. I mean, if Sir Anthony Dominguez can get the Blue Jays number 10 prospect with an ERA over 3, I think the White Sox should do just as good with a guy like Steven Wilson, who also has club control and is exactly 30, but he's got to go. He's got to go because, again, the White Sox have got to start opening up spots to audition for 2026. So while the Rosado trade looks like a bust, hopefully the next one doesn't turn out to be. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And I'll be back tomorrow with hopefully some more talk of the team making some more deals. Be on the lookout on the YouTube channel for me doing some quick shorts. If deals are made, I may even jump in with some bonus episodes, so be on the lookout. We're definitely going to be trying to cover the trade deadline as much as we can here because this is a chance to, again, add more players that can help this team moving forward. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding Andrew Vaughn's resurgence, sending White Sox fandom into chaos, the White Sox trading Austin Slater along with Adrian Houser potentially being traded, and this week's Way Back Wednesday. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub, or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.